are live. How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest edition of Mets Free Agent Frenzy live here. Now that the winter meetings has passed, which was underwhelming to say the least, we have plenty to talk about in Mets land, as tonight's show is going to be highlighted by the controversy, which was Shohei Ohtani all day long. I have a lot to say on that approach from the media and how I feel about it as not only a Mets fan, but just as a baseball fan as a whole I want to share. But more importantly, how Shohei Ohtani is going to ultimately, inevitably impact the New York Mets in their pursuit of Yoshinobu Yamamoto, either for the better or for the worse. We're going to get into all that, along with the latest Yamamoto updates that we have heard of recent today per SNY, along with plenty others as to the type of players the Mets are targeting this offseason. Who is Jorge Lopez, for those that don't know, that didn't check out the video that I posted around, almost 2 a.m. Eastern earlier this morning, because I'm an absolute sicko. We have a lot to get into. Today's show is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook, but more on them a little bit later in this one. Like I said, a lot to get into in this Friday evening, but more importantly, how's it going, everybody? Happy to have all you beauties in here. Greatly appreciate it. I see Brendan, I see John, I see Harrison, Dave, my absolute man, Brian, Peen, Robert, Brandall, John, great member on the channel, George, great member on the channel. All you guys, happy to have you in here. Alex, Jamin, Joe, the list goes on and on. Thank you guys all so much for first chiming in. Is greatly appreciated. But I'm going to start off by talking about some personal news. As you guys saw on both Twitter and the community tab yesterday, yes, your boy Wardy is going to be a father next year. I'm beyond ecstatic, and I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank each and every one of you. I've had hundreds upon hundreds of comments congratulating me, thanking me, and I cannot begin to just thank you all enough for the kind words. I'm beyond taken back. The love has been immense, and normally this is something where I was teetering for a while, how to approach this in the public eye, because I'm, even though I view myself as just the average schmuck, I'm in the public eye. You guys know this, and this is a little new to me, obviously, because I'm not familiar in how to go about these things, because it's a very personal thing, but it makes sense to, of course, let you guys know now versus say, hey, why is Wardy missing for a couple days or a week or so, sometime next summer, because, okay, yeah, by the way, I'm having a kid. So it's good that you guys know now. I'm excited to share that with you all. Hopefully, depending on, if it's a boy or a girl, we'll see if we'll be passing the keys down to baby Wardy down the line here at WardyNYM. But again, I just want to sincerely thank you all so much for the kind words, the congratulations, as you guys are spamming live in our replay right now. It really does mean the world to me, and because of you guys, you have helped make this a lot better and much easier situation than it would have been otherwise, because I've been beyond humbled and grateful to be in the position I am, where I get to talk about my favorite team for a living. Not a lot of people can say they get the luxury or really the chance to do that. Thankfully, I found myself in this position. It's because of every single one of you. So thank you again, everybody. 'Tis the season. Happy holidays to you all in advance, to everyone, whether it's a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, whatever it may be. Just seriously, thank you, everybody. That's the first and foremost thing I want to share here. John, thank you so much for your $2 donation. Congrats again, Wardy. Let's win for Papa Tower. You'll love to hear it. Again, thank you guys. Love you all to death. It really does mean a lot. Congrats, baby. Better be a Mets fan if the kid wants to stay in the house. Yes, obviously I'm joking, but it would be the perfect villain arc, right? If I have a kid who grows up to be a Philly fan or something, it would be Rich. Let's pray that doesn't happen. Let's do a universal prayer together, regardless of what you're praying for. But in all seriousness, I know that I will have made it as a father the day that my kid understands what the term schmuck means, meaning that they're just pointing at me because I am the definition of said word. But okay, enough with the jokes. And again, thank you for the congratulations, but I don't want to take up too much of that time, because it's important that we get into the latest news here regarding the latest moves the Mets have done. And then from there, we're going to shift into the Shohei Ohtani discussion, which was nuts. I also want to give a massive shout out to Blue Jays Today, Ball Cap Sports, my man Jim, Robbie, there at Robbie Hyde Baseball. All these guys were streaming all day long with the Shohei Ohtani news, because they're either covering baseball as a whole, or in Jim's case, he covers baseball as a whole and is a diehard Blue Jays fan. Blue Jays Today, good friends of mine, have known them since I first started YouTube. They, I think, gained at least 2,000 subscribers today alone with the controversy that happened with Otani, like 4,000 concurrent viewers in their live show. It was insane. I'm just so happy to see these fellow creators get not only the recognition that they deserve, but the growth that they deserve. So shout out to each and every one of them. Shout out also to all my fellow Yanks fans in the community space, and Derek at NYY Recaps. Pat, of course, here that we checked out in the Bridging the Gap podcast yesterday. You either love or hate Pat. Regardless on how you feel about him, Pat is a great friend of mine, and I definitely enjoy our pod that we do every single Thursday. Make sure to check that out yesterday if you haven't already. But with the Soto news going on, the Otani news, of course, these are guys we would love in Queens, but I have to share spread the kind words to my fellow creators, as they have done a tremendous job covering everything to an absolute T this MLB offseason. Goomba, thank you so much for your $2 $2 donation. Really appreciate that. What met you naming what met you naming him after? Oh, congrats, bro. Depending on if it's a guy or a girl, I think you guys are going to certainly be happy with the name, especially if it's a boy. So we'll see. David, thank you so much. Congratulations. We greatly appreciate you, a longtime member here. But now let's get into it after talking about all that stuff that is irrelevant to what is the purpose of tonight's show, which is starting with the latest Mets moves. Now, who had on their bingo card the Mets were going to sign Jorge Lopez last night, huh? If I see one hand up, you're a schmuck. You had no clue. No one had a clue. And of course, because the Mets signed a reliever that's coming off of a down season, that inevitably means he's going to be the Mets 100% setup man next year, and they're going to utilize him every single way possible, right? No, that is not the case, but yet we still have these same fans coming out here that just cannot seem to wrap their heads around the idea that you need to add a lot of arms. And I've talked extensively about this, but I feel like I need to constantly repeat myself what the David Stearns philosophy is when evaluating the bullpen. The big thing, you want to spread as many eggs and as many baskets as possible. You don't want to put all your eggs in one or two. Don't get me wrong. We would love the Mets to, of course, acquire bigger name relievers, and I firmly believe that they're going to. And one name that you should not be shocked if you hear me talk about in the near future is David Robertson on a potential return. Regardless on how you guys feel about that, I have some choice words I want to share on D-Rob in the near future here on the channel, along with there's a plethora of options of reliever market, and we've seen year after year after year, teams are always going to acquire depth pieces that maybe are coming off of underwhelming years, but had a breakout season in the case of Jorge Lopez in the 2022 year. But the veteran right-hander, of course, represented Team Puerto Rico with now Mets bullpen coach recently hired in Jose Rosado. They're rekindling that relationship. We saw how nasty Jorge was in the WBC. There was teammates with Edwin Diaz and, Francisco Lindor, just to name a few. And now he's going to be taking his talents to Queens after, again, having a not-so-great 2023 campaign. But as I said in yesterday's video, for those that didn't check it out, a couple things really stand out about Jorge Lopez and why the Mets made the signing. So we'll just do it in like a bullet point format. One, David Stearns knows the guy during his time in Milwaukee. So he was initially drafted by the Brewers in 2011, and we'll rekindle that relationship now with David as he was a Brewer for his 2015 and 2016 season to kickstart his career. Number two, what did the Mets lack so much in their bullpen last year? In great part because of not having Edwin Diaz, it was velocity. The Mets were among the worst teams in baseball last year in their bullpen when throwing 97, 98 plus miles per hour. It just wasn't happening, and that went in part with their lack of success in said pen. Because while you don't need to be a flamethrower to have success, we all know this. You can be crafty with your off speed. You can have nasty breaking pitches. We know that velo is still a vital part of today's game, and if you have a complete lack of that, where you're almost in a class of your own, bullpen-wise in baseball, where you have other teams throwing over 1,000 pitches out of their pen, 98 plus, and the Mets only threw not even 10 times, that's a big deal. And Jorge Lopez profiled in the 90th percentile this past year, an average velo right around 97 miles per hour, can touch triple digits there. He has some nasty stuff in his arsenal, just someone that needs to put it all together again after having, again, a rough 2023 campaign. Of course, had an all-star caliber season in 2022, and even though he eventually returned to the Baltimore Orioles, we saw in the 2023 season after splitting time with the Twins and another club, once he returned to Baltimore, he was able to find himself a little bit again as well. Love the breaking ball, love the slide piece. The sinker went on, has plenty of movement. Jorge Lopez is a piece on a one-year, $2 million deal. Now, the only reason why you're complaining about this is if you believe that this is a Wilpons 2.0 here, where Jorge Lopez is going to be actually your setup man for next season, guaranteed. Farthest thing from the truth, I promise you there's going to be a lot more arms the Mets pick up, a lot of names that maybe you don't know, and that's why I'm here to help break it down for you and kind of dump things down to simple forms for those that say have no clue who these players are, like a Michael Tonkin, more recently now to Jorge Lopez. What these guys have in common, they all have certain parts of their arsenal that is appealing to David Stearns, and he's trying to add as many different types of arms and arm slots as possible for the upcoming season to see what works and what doesn't, because you much rather have a plethora of options ranging from A all the way to C versus having, just a couple A, and then you're already dropping off to C, D, and you're already getting into the minor leagues. You might need to even call up guys in double A. No one wants to deal with that. The Mets don't want to deal with that. David Stearns, what made him so powerful during his time as GM in Pobo in Milwaukee was his brilliance on a small budget to add a lot of different names and see what works with a strong analytics group. The Mets are actively working on their analytics group and their pitching lab, which is, again, something that takes years to build because the Mets had none of this, mind you, when Steve Cohen first became owner. So Rome wasn't built overnight. We understand that. However, David Stearns has an understanding of knowing how to bring the philosophy he had in Milwaukee while also being able to spend the big bucks when it is appropriate. No, the Mets are not going to act like drunken sailors, but what they are going to do is be very strategic in the players that they acquire in a manner that is a different form than what we saw during Billy Epler's time as GM. And prior to that, Zach Scott, Jared Porter. Yes, Jared Porter. Remember that? Yeah. Aside from Francisco Lindor, you probably don't do much. Point is, this is a different ran organization. This is a different ran Mets now with the full belief and understanding to be a very competitive, a highly competitive team for 2024. So for the fans out here that truly believe that what the Mets are doing at the moment means that they're going in a full rebuild next year, with all due respect, you truly have no clue what you were talking about, because all you need to do is listen and pay attention to what everyone has been saying from the top down, starting with the roughly $20 billion man himself and Steve Cohen. Yes, the Mets are not going to land Shohei Ohtani more than likely. Yes, the Mets did not land Juan Soto. Does this mean that they're going to have a horrendous next season? No, there is a mindset and a belief behind the structure that they have thus far and what they're building here that is going beyond the 2024 season that fans, of course, need to remind themselves and keep note of when evaluating the moves that they're making. How you want Jared Eichhoff to be pitching? Do you want these guys called up from AA to be pitching? No, you don't want that. So it's imperative that you add as much depth as humanly possible. And the beauty of it, the best part of it, when you add a boatload of different arms on 1 or 2 year deals with low AAV, you can cut ties with them whenever you want. You think Steve Cohen's going to be stubborn to part ways with a reliever if he's not doing well? This is the same Steve Cohen that ate the rest of Robinson Cano's contract, that ate James McCann's contract. He has no issue doing this for bigger profile contracts. So I'm going to go on a limb and say that if things do not work out early in the pen, the Mets are going to pivot and go elsewhere, whether that's via trade or going to different options that they signed this offseason. So just want to reiterate this once more for people in the back that have this silly notion that the Mets are going out and trying to do absolutely nothing this offseason. Just pay attention. Just please listen to me. I'm not just trying to hype them up because, of course, I'm a Mets fan. I'm a content creator. I love talking about them. And, of course, I love seeing the team have success, because that means I, too, have success here that we built here on WardyNYM. But having said that, putting, the content creator thought process aside, just paying attention day to day with what the Mets are doing, by taking your time to follow on with what David Stearns has said since he became Pobo, by taking time to follow on with Steve Cohen, what he has physically said out of his mouth, and every step to this point, along with track record that David Stearns had prior to his time in Queens, all leads you to the understanding that this is not only normal, but this is also the right path, hopefully, for the club going forward. So that is kind of, my 2 cents on that. I feel like I'm going to have to say that every single day until the Mets make a signing for a guy that is more than, say, a $2 million deal. But until then, I will be, whether I like it or not, I will be happy to reiterate it, because I hope as many Mets fans and baseball fans as a whole can truly grasp and understand what they're trying to build here, and knowing that this is not going to be the end-all for the offseason. What they have done so far are not going to be their biggest moves. And I assure you, I will promise you right now, if the Michael Tonkins and the Jorge Lopez's of the world are the biggest names the Mets pick up in their bullpen by the conclusion of this offseason, I will not only go out of my way to have a singular apology and a separate video to post out here, but I will even go live and let you guys just rag on me for the entire time, and I will eat it. I will go that far. It's not going to faze me, because my confidence level is at absolute high, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put 2 and 2 together what this team's thought process is this MLB offseason. Yet here I am having to say the same things over and over and over again. So to everyone that has been listening, that understands the thought process, thank you. And those that haven't, all I will say is just continue to see how the offseason plays out, and you let me know how you feel by the conclusion of it. Of course, I understand if the Mets don't land Yamamoto, everyone and their mother is going to be upset, including myself, even if it's not because of a lack of effort on the Mets end, which it won't be. It will be because of preference, if that ended up being the case. But we will get there. We have a lot to say on Yamamoto. We have a lot to say on Otani. Ricky, thank you so much for a $5 holla. $2 holla, rather, but it feels like $5 because Ricky's been OG on the channel. Wardy, congrats. Now let's get Yamamoto. You said it, boss. Thank you so much. Hope you and your lady are doing fantastic. Shout out to John, great member. Shout out to all you beauties in here. Really does mean a lot, guys. But now, before I go further, I have to let you guys, we got to do the quick ad read. You know the drill. And the reason why is because the reason what helps us be afloat here on YouTube with a full-time thing is by having some fantastic sponsors. And that is why I'm beyond grateful to shout out today's sponsor, BetUS. BetUS is America's leading sportsbook, and what they have cooked up for us here in WardyNYM is very special. They have come out with their latest odds for Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, where they're going to land. And all you need to do to get in on the action today for something that is both safe, secure, and reliable as the best sportsbook out there for your over-unders, whether you're doing predictions, futures, things of that that nature, or you're doing in-game props, we're going to be doing Wardy parlays for the 2024 Metropolitan season. Look at the odds here that they have for Shohei Ohtani. If you want to get in on this, all you have to do is click the link in the description and you get a 125% boost with your first deposit. So if you drop, say, north of $100, you get $225 right off the rip to bet whatever you want, and it's that easy. You got Dodgers as number one, and we're going to get into that because it looks like the Blue Jays were number one today in the odds, but maybe, just maybe, John Morosi wasn't right. Cue the sarcasm, because he wasn't right. We know that. There you go. Dodgers, Blue Jays, San Francisco Giants, Cubs 1 through 4. But now let's look at Yoshinobu Yamamoto. What does BetUS have? They have the New York Mets as the front runner to land the Japanese star at plus 200. The Yanks right behind the Mets, plus 300. The Dodgers, plus 300. The Red Sox, plus 400. And the San Francisco Giants, plus 500. And again, you can get in on this right now by clicking the link in the description. And once more, shout out to BetUS for being a great sponsor in today's video. And now let's hop back into this with the damn intro. Every single time, I forget to turn it off again after I switch slides. So my mistake there, guys. But again, let me know how you guys feel. Do you think that those odds, especially for Yoshinobu Yamamoto, are accurate? Or do you think that this is setting the Mets up for failure? Let me know how you're feeling about that. I'm really curious on that front. Really does mean a lot. And again, thank you everyone for the congratulations regarding what I said earlier. Really does mean a lot. Sorry, Wardy, been a fan of 30 years. I've seen this movie before. I understand Mets fans having PTSD. I completely understand where you're coming from. What I'm trying to reiterate is that what the Mets are doing right now is anything but uncommon. They're just adding depth. They're building depth. The only reason why Mets fans have their panties in a twist, and it's a fact, and you guys know who you are, is because the Mets are starting with their depth moves and not starting with the big moves. The problem is the big moves that the Mets want to do are dominoes that have yet to fall, because these guys are going to take their pretty little time when making a decision. And if you're Yoshinobu Yamamoto, if you're Shohei Ohtani, why wouldn't you? Ohtani's going to get north of $600 million. Yamamoto's going to get $300+ million, including the posting fee. Of course they're going to take their time. This is a big decision. You think they give a flying you-know-what about how us fans feel with how this is dragged on all offseason long? They don't give a rat's ass. If they did, all these decisions would have been made by now before winter meetings even began. So again, to the fans out there that are like, why didn't we sign Yamamoto yet? Why didn't we land all these guys? Last time I checked, all these guys are available in the market right now for a reason, guys. And the Ohtani domino is the big one that needs to fall in order for that to happen. The floodgates will open with Shohei, but until then, do not expect anything too crazy, at least from what we have heard reportedly. Now, having said that, let's take a minute to talk about that shit show you call the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes today. All right? Seriously. I see early morning John Morosi says, breaking, Shohei Ohtani imminent to make a decision. Oh, he's on a flight to Toronto. We're getting people saying Ohtani's signing with the Blue Jays. We're getting MLB Network saying he's on a flight to Toronto. All these things. None of that happened. It was nothing. It was a joke, and it just shows you how ridiculous and how there is such a lack of credibility in today's media. It is unbelievable. We're just spewing out speculation as if it's accurate nowadays. It's one thing to be a content creator saying shit. It's another when you're on payroll for major networks like MLB and are being told, oh, okay, yeah, it's imminent. It's going to happen. He's going to Toronto, basically. And the guy didn't even land in Toronto. He's been in Southern Cal all day. Bob Nightingale was the most credible reporter out there today. What have we come to as a society? Are you fucking kidding me? And then, for that matter, they throw Morosi back on TV and MLB Network today. What? How? The backpedaling was obscure. Like, what is going on here? I feel for Blue Jays fans that went through that today. I feel for Dodgers fans, not so much for to the good Dodgers fans, yes. But to the ones that, you know, are the typical Dodgers fans, no. You get my point. You had an entire country rallying around Shohei today, stalking a flight with some poor schmucks on it that aren't Shohei Ohtani. Like, what are we doing here? It was ridiculous. And it just shows you how piss poor today's MLB media has become. It is a shell of what it once was. And this goes back to when I first started YouTube and having to deal with the boob himself saying that Bauer's a Met when he's not a Met. I'm flipping out. I'm on stream, so I can relate and understand where the guys at Blue Jays Today, Jim at Ballcap Sports, etc. are coming from. I've been there. I've done those multi-hour long live streams of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours for moves that inevitably didn't even happen. And it's a joke. Everyone cares about being first. No one gives a flying you-know-what about being right. And that doesn't just go for media and baseball, that goes for today's journalism. And it's disgusting because it waters down the people that truly are hard at work, that know what they're talking about, one, but are very, very smart about when they're dropping news. They're making sure that they're not getting confirmation from one source, but we're talking 3, 4, 5 plus sources. As someone who has had the privilege to understand what it's like with the media market, understanding how reporters operate by meeting them in person, breaking down these type of things, I can tell you that it's truly disgusting how we have allowed things to get so far where an anomaly of a player in Shohei Ohtani, the face of Major League Baseball, the face of sports in Japan, potentially now going to be the face of Canada as a whole, and you fumble it that bad in reporting because you just want to be first, I have no respect for that. I really don't. And I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent here. John Morosi, I have no ill will with. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him. I met Morosi, Sherman, and Brodie Van Wagenen, funny enough, behind home plate earlier this year at a Mets game, talking shop before the game. Morosi, great guy. I have no ill will with him. He doesn't have sources. He doesn't have them nearly to the caliber. He's not known for breaking news whatsoever. Even Soto, he jumped the gun on a bit. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference between being someone that's on a network and relaying these things. It's another when you're the Jeff Passons, the Ken Rosenthals of the world. While they're not accurate, while they're not perfect, no one's perfect. They're on the money 9 out of 10 times, especially in the case of Jeff. You know that when a Jeff bomb drops, it's like 9.5 out of 10 times 100% accurate. I'm disgusted with what I've seen so far with how things have transpired this offseason. In particular, Morosi not making any mention of the Mets' involvement in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. To a lesser degree, Michael A. Taylor. Not that the Mets need Michael A. Taylor. I'm not going to lose sleep if they don't land him, but they've been actively in his market since winter meetings even began prior to that, right? They met with him. They've had mutual interest there. But we're not going to acknowledge these things just because maybe you don't have a source out of the New York market? Like, what the fuck are we doing? It's ridiculous to me. It is truly ridiculous to me. I cannot stand how things are coming every offseason. No one gives a damn about being right. All they care about is being first. And they're never going to be held accountable. They're never going to be held, not nearly to the liking that they should be. I'm sorry, but if you're a $600 million man and you're the face of baseball and you're having an entire country of Canada being stalkers following along an entire flight in which Otani wasn't even on it, there needs to be some type of repercussions for this. And not just being like on TV saying, oh, you know, while I did hear that was imminent, it is not happening yet and Shohei does not have a decision. Completely countering what you were saying to start the day. And what? You're not even going to get a slap on the wrist more than likely. Why is this okay? Why are we allowing these things to just pass? I digress. It's just so... God, if I'm Peter Griffin right now, Family Guy, you want to know what grinds my gears for that news segment? That grinds my effing gears. Edwin, thank you so much for $5 holla. Edwin says, with Cano and Scherzer's contracts coming off the books soon, do you think that will be a factor in getting Yamamoto and Otani? Otani is not happening. Let's just start there. The guy isn't coming to New York. Unless we find out otherwise, that Cohen out of nowhere, like for Max, like for Correa especially, comes out of nowhere and just says, hey, take my $600 million and I'll give you, you know, half the borough or something. Like, unless that happens, no. Otani isn't coming here, and I don't think that those play big factors whatsoever. Now let's get into the impact Otani has on Yoshinobu Yamamoto and the Mets here, because it is significant depending on where Otani lands. Now, I've spoken about this at great length, either on social media, on Twitter, or of course in recent YouTube live streams, but I want to reiterate it again. If Shohei Ohtani lands with the Toronto Blue Jays, while I would be happy for Toronto, happy for their fandom, it'll be sick to see him playing in that dome and going matching up with Aaron Judge for years to come. I think that would be amazing. Having said that, if the Dodgers do not land Shohei Ohtani, where do you think that they're going to pivot to? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the guy that they also have been scouting for the past couple years in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who they really, really like and will love. And I understand there are many factors that go into this. I'm not saying that Yamamoto is a lock to go anywhere, let alone LA if they miss out on Ohtani. But you want to talk about desperation. This is an LA Dodgers team that has been waiting multiple years for Ohtani to become available. A big factor in not bringing Trey Turner back was because of Ohtani and the prospect of landing him. Did Dave Roberts really factor into a high degree by slipping up a couple days on winter meetings to the point where that could factor into Ohtani's decision-making because they want to say hush-hush? I have no clue. But what I do know is that the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the San Francisco Giants, and the LA Dodgers are the top 5 dogs in the market, along with 2 mystery teams. One of which I have a sneaky feeling is the Philadelphia Phillies. I could be wrong, but I know early reporting did indicate after they re-signed Nola that they're still very interested in heavy pitching this offseason and do like Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Another team that could be in there, maybe the Chicago Cubs, among others. Point is, if Ohtani goes to Toronto, the Mets don't just have the Yanks to worry about. They don't just have Boston to worry about. They don't just have San Fran to worry about, where they are so desperate to land a big piece this offseason after trying to remedy what was a failed offseason last year and striking out on Aaron Judge and striking out on Carlos Correa. They need to land a star. They desperately want to for their fan base, and they actually have money to work with. But now you're telling me the LA Dodgers don't land Ohtani? We have a bigger problem on our hands. We do. And to Yanks fans, I think that Yamamoto's a lock to go there. I crack myself up. To Mets fans, I think that Yamamoto is a guarantee to come here. I too crack myself up because while the Mets have a great chance, I firmly believe the Mets are not only top player, what's been reported, but they will be. If the Mets do not land Yamamoto, I firmly believe that they will come in second or at absolute worst third. I don't see how it's going to be third because Steve Cohen's going to pony up the money. We know that. And money's the biggest factor here. But things changed fairly significantly if Ohtani does not land in LA with the Dodgers. Now, if Ohtani does land with the Dodgers, what about the Toronto Blue Jays? The Blue Jays have shown interest in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. If they're willing to spend $600 million, which is what it's going to take to land Ohtani, why wouldn't they look at Yamamoto as a potential pivot as well? So these are things as fans that we have to weigh, and we have to realize that while we would love a player, and a player has mutual interest in coming here, there's so many other factors that come into play. It, of course, takes two to tango, but there's a desperation factor that we're seeing in this year's market that is different than years past because of the two-headed monster in this free agent market. It's Ohtani, it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto, there's a gap, then it's Blake Snell, then it's Cody Bellinger, then it's Josh Hader, and it's everybody else. There's a significant gap there. And teams that miss out on top talents that they have been waiting one, if not multiple years for, means that there's going to be a further desperation than years past. And for the Mets here, by not landing Ohtani, it's hard to not be not only distraught at that, but also knowing that there's no proper pivot in the free agent market. Blake Snell's a fantastic talent, but how many Mets fans sit here right now and want Blake Snell on a 7+ year contract? Does Blake Snell even want to come to New York? Jordan Montgomery would love Monty, but I don't foresee a world where the Mets land both Yamamoto and Monty. I think it would be one or the other. And Yamamoto is a frontline starter, something that Monty would not be with Mets. Kodai Senga would stay the ace, right? Something that could play in the Mets' hand here, of course, when thinking about the battle between the Bronx and Queens for Yamamoto, something to keep of note is that Yamamoto would be, without question, the top dog in this rotation. If he goes to the Bronx, while he will be a star, the ace will stay Garrett Cole. Kodai Senga will have no problem shifting over there to that second spot for Yoshi, should he come to Queens. And Kodai Senga, too, will play a heavy factor into this when evaluating the Mets' chances in landing Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So to everyone watching live, because we have over 600 concurrent viewers, happy to have you all in here as we break down the latest in Mets land, headlined by Shohei Ohtani, that controversy, the ridiculousness, which was, and this is not Rob Dyrdek's show, which was Shohei Ohtani in the sweepstakes today. I want to know, you as fellow fans, whoever you're a fan of, how do you feel about Shohei Ohtani and the impact he inevitably has on this free agent market wherever he lands? He's 1,000% impacting so much, not only in respective players' value, but also in teams' decision-making if they swing and miss and strike out on Ohtani. So let me know how you guys feel about that. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm going to answer a comment or two here before we advance further in the show, as I have more to say in particular about Yamamoto and the latest updates that we've seen reportedly today from SNY. Oh, I'm not counting out the Angels with Ohtani. It just, the Angels have yet to prove to us that they're going to be willing to spend the money that Ohtani's looking for. So reportedly, they have been, more on the bottom scale of things, but I'm not going to count them out. But if I'm Shohei Ohtani, aside from familiarity and being comfortable, do I want to deal with Artie Moreno for another 10 years? I think any rational person would say no to that. Because unlike what Brian Cashman has done this offseason, which is proving doubters wrong, and I commend Cashman for that as much as I hate the Yanks and I think he's a schmuck, naturally as a Mets fan, I commend him for going all in and turning on the media and really trying to be the big bad evil empire again. Because that's the Yanks way. That is the Steinbrenner way, in which he's looking down and being happy that they're finally getting their head out of their ass. But Artie Moreno, what the fuck has he proven? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. He has proven to be a failure year after year after year. This guy was trying to sell the Angels, decided not to. The worst thing for Halos fans. One of the worst owners in baseball. I don't have an ill will with him personally, besides the fact that he was against Cohen becoming owner. For that, F you. Aside from that, what has he done? He's wasted Mike Trout's entire career. He wasted Shohei Ohtani's entire tenure. Imagine having Shohei Ohtani from the start of the 2018 season, 5 years, and you don't do jack shit with him when it comes to playoffs. Mike Trout, it feels like it's been my entire lifetime since the last time we saw that guy in the public eye in playoffs, right? So for those reasons, if I'm Shohei, aside from familiarity, comfortability, not being in the public eye nearly to the degree as he would be in some other markets, why in God's name would he want to go back to the Halos and deal with that schmuck of an owner? Unless he knows that, hey, they will be sold soon the way that the Orioles look like that they're going to be sold soon, which is awesome for O's fans. The O's are an absolute wagon. Love that team to death, man. Love Camden Yards. Checked it out for the first time in person this year. So many great things to say about the Baltimore Orioles. Have no ill will with them whatsoever. So happy that they may finally get an owner that's willing to spend. On top of the great analytics group, the great player development that they have, the fantastic drafting that they have done with amateur scouting the past number of years, utilizing their top draft picks to their advantage. Lots of credit there. But again, Ohtani, Halos, there's just a lot of reasons as to why I don't see that happening. Sean, thank you so much for your $2 donation. Sean says, Peter Griffin, a.k.a. the guy from Fortnite. Yeah, the freaking the buff-looking Peter Griffin now. I won't be a schmuck LO. Have to be a wild card team. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, I do think, as I firmly believe the Mets are hopefully going to make playoffs next year. But again, it's all contingent on what they do this offseason, right? It really is. But now let's get into Wardy got major networks trying to keep up. It's frustrating. Edwin, thank you for the donation. 1,200. Not sure about Yamamoto, but we have the worst starting rotation in the division. Not much faith in that. More players will be added. I promise you, 1,200. Thank you for that donation, though. Let's talk about Yamamoto in the latest, okay? So this comes out from everyone's favorite, Andy Martino, today. Of course, I will say this about Andy. There are separate things that are frustrating to me as a fan, putting content creator media aspect aside, that I have not enjoyed about him in years past. However, when it comes to actual reporting, the past 2 years plus, I do have to give credit where credit's due. Andy has very much been on the money, even though that there are times where if he, of course, is coming out with articles similar to what we're going to reference right now, where it's a lot of the same old, but I'm also not one to really rag on him too much, just because as a content creator, until we find out truly where Yamamoto's going, a lot of it is regurgitated things that we already knew, just including little tidbits that maybe we didn't know prior. So regardless of how you feel about him, he has been on the money for the past couple years now, and one thing that will always be in my mind right away when I think about Martino with news that he himself has broke was, I think, a 7:30 or so, if not 8 a.m. report of Taijuan Walker signing with the Mets in my first offseason covering the club. That was crazy. That was a nuts one when that first happened. But let's get into the latest. I'm going to talk about the latest on both the Mets and Yanks perspective. But we'll start here with the New York Yanks so that way we can get into the Mets. From Martino says the following, and I quote, "The Yankees have a strong desire to land Yamamoto and a willingness to show evil empire levels of financial aggressiveness. The Mets had hopes that the Yanks' acquisition of Soto would take them out of the Yamamoto sweepstakes, but Hal Steinbrenner remains all in on spending even after competing the Soto trade per sources." Now, my question is, if that's true, how much high hopes did the Mets really have if they landed Soto, take them out of Yamamoto? Because I think any rational fan knows that wasn't going to be the case. Maybe you can understand a little bit because Soto's bringing on $30+ million right away for the 2024 season. But if you're going to land Juan Soto, that's a rental. Why wouldn't you go all in, right? Again, these are questions we've asked with the Yanks in years past, where they haven't went all in while they've had guys on expiring contracts. Where it's like, why aren't you doing it? Now's the time to do it, especially when there's no guarantee with these guys returning. However, that is not the case. And Cashman, the Yanks would love to be that evil empire again. Just like how Pat would love that, the Yanks fan, who is my co-host of Bridging the Gap podcast, in which I will say, guys, regardless of how you feel about some of the takes, man, oh man, did we have so much fun with last night's show, talking about all the latest with Yamamoto, really the battle between these two teams, advocating for both sides from a Yanks fan perspective, a Mets fan perspective, and so much more. It was easily our most fun show. We even brought my bunny Gigi in the show towards the end. And if you're an OG on the channel, you know I have bunnies that both Gigi and Stormy that I bring in live shows from time to time for fun. It was just a really, really good conversation, a lot of back and forth, a lot of banter, but it's always a great time. So highly implore you all to check it out in case you haven't already. But now let's get into the latest from the Mets perspective, according to Andy Martino, says the following, and I quote, Mets officials flew 14 hours from New York to Tokyo, ate French-Japanese cuisine, which we all know, with a small group that included Yamamoto, his mother, and Kodai Senga's translator, Hiro, and flew back. The purpose of said visit was to make clear the depth and seriousness of the Mets' interest, and to give the pitcher the chance to get to know the team and its top executives. It appears to have been a success. The Yankees have been long a favorite over the Mets to sign Yamamoto because of just the simple reasons behind being enamored by the pinstripes and knowing the history of the Yankees. However, Cohen and Stearns seem to have really leveled the playing field here. So, to Yanks fans, I feel like you're going to run away with this one. Let's pump the brakes a little bit, okay? Last time I checked, yeah, you got Steinbrenner. But, you know, I'm sorry. Is your owner worth $20 billion, where the next richest owner in baseball is worth $6 billion? We know that Steve Cohen, when he wants something, he's going to do everything in his power to get him. And that's why, and I'm going to say it again for the 100th and billionth time, because that makes no sense. The Mets losing out on Yamamoto will not be because they're not the highest bidder. I'm telling you right now, if the Mets are not the highest bidder for Yamamoto, that is only because Yamamoto made it clear that even if the Mets overspend for him, he doesn't want to come here. That's the only exception in that situation. Steve Cohen is going to throw out the bag. $300 million is not going to be a problem for him. And no, I'm not speaking on his behalf, obviously. But if you've been following along with how Steve Cohen has operated since he became owner, when he wants something, he's going to do what he can to land him. And the Mets are the only reported team since Yamamoto has officially been posted to go out of their way to fly all the way to Japan just to meet Yamamoto and his family. And I love the fact that David Stearns was there as well. I didn't initially know that. Initial reports from Will Samuel was that it was just Steve Cohen. Then it came out a little bit later that day, a couple days ago, that both David Stearns, now we see Hiro, their translator, and so much. And having Kodai Senga too, I mentioned this on last night's show. Okay, Yanks fans, they're going to say, what? We had Tanaka. That's great and all. And again, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of factors as to why it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Yoshinobu Yamamoto is a New York Yankee next season. It would be the farthest thing from a shocking thing. But what is also true is that the Mets have everything that Yamamoto could be looking for and helping him right now to kickstart his career and going forward. Yeah, we can talk about 27 rings all we want. Let's talk about the past decade under Cashman, huh? Let's talk about what the Yanks have done over the past 20 years versus the Mets. Yes, they've had their success. Yes, they've had their World Series, but it isn't drastic. The Mets actually got to the dance once over the past decade. They didn't win it all, but the Mets had no right to be there either, for being quite frank. They lost to a Kansas City Royals team that was in the dance and lost the year prior. Of course, they were going to position themselves to win. Just like as a New York Rangers fan, Rangers losing to the LA Kings in the Stanley Cup around that same time wasn't all that shocking because the Kings just won their championship against Martin Brodeur and those Devils a couple years prior. So you understand there's reasoning behind those things, right? And now having Kodai Senga coming off of a Cy Young-esque season where he received Cy Young votes and All-Star in his rookie year, how can you not look at that as Yoshinobu Yamamoto and be appealed by that? One, and two, having someone that has familiarity to really show you the ropes around everywhere in New York. That's another thing that Kodai Senga can help provide. And having the success that Senga had, which in his first year with the Mets is a more successful year than Tanaka has ever had as a Yankee, is telling. There are plenty of things to favor the Mets in here, as there are with the Yanks. And that's what makes this so fascinating. There is no one that looks like a clear frontrunner whatsoever, even with the Mets going out of their way and Cohen and Stearns doing what they did. I do not view this as, okay, this is the Mets 100%. I don't view this as the Yanks 100%. Even if the Mets weren't involved in this whatsoever and say it was just Yanks, Dodgers, San Fran, I would still be saying these same things because Yamamoto is such an interesting market where there are major players involved, but of course it's going to come down to dollars. And if that ends up being the true factor in the end, not only fit, comfortability, which of course the Mets can probably provide better than the Yanks because of Senga's success, having Hiro, working with Jeremy Hefner, and really understanding what it means to have a six-man rotation of recent years, but two, having the dollars. I just don't see a world where Steinbrenner is going to top Cohen. So until proven otherwise, I'm going to stand by that. I really am. Mets are irrelevant. Well, so is the name that you have and the PFP. But I digress. I believe in bum Mets. Okay, if you believe in the bum Mets, I guess that's a compliment saying that the Mets are going to happen. They're going to land Yamamoto. I appreciate the Yanks fans chiming in though too. My question to the Yanks fans that are watching right now, did you check out the Bridging the Gap podcast from a Mets and a Yank fan perspective yesterday? If you haven't already, highly implore you to check that out. And I know Yanks fans are going to talk their shit. They feel like the big bad wolf. Mind you, most Yanks fans in the chat right now likely haven't seen a championship. Or if they did, they were, probably in diapers. We got a lot of youngins in here. Okay? Yanks fans, in my opinion, that have the right to talk shit are, of course, the ones that witnessed a championship, but especially the ones that were witnessing everything going on in the 90s. For those fans, you have all the right in the world. All the right in the world. Because there's nothing I could say as a young Mets fan. I've never witnessed a championship. I'm 100% aware of that. I don't know what that feeling's like. I cannot wait to see what that feeling's going to be like. It'll probably be one of the best feelings of my lifetime, praying it does happen at least once. We got some time, hopefully. But it's just that it always cracks me up, the young Yanks fans that are brought up from their parents that, of course, are more the arrogant, the cocky fans, for good reason, because they grew up with just the elite fandom of being a Yanks fan, being the evil empire, having their continued success, going on their great runs. But to the younger fans, talk this shit all you want. You think I give a rat's ass? What are you going to do? Tell me about, oh, yeah, I was two. I was two when the Yanks won. Congratulations. You want a fucking cookie? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I got to change my diaper. Thanks for reminding me. You got it, brother. You got it. It cracks me up. Okay, we talked about Yamamoto. We've talked about Otani. My question to you now, to my 700 concurrent viewers, where do you think Yamamoto goes? Do you think he's going to be a Met? Do you think he's going to be a Yankee? Do you think he's going to be a Red Sox? Mind you, everyone's sleeping on Boston. And while I don't foresee Boston being a top 2 dog in the end for Yamamoto, they do have Masataka Yoshida, who was a longtime teammate of Yamamoto's. That's something to make a note of. And they have a really strong market there and an aggressiveness to be a competitive team next year. I don't think anyone should be sleeping on Boston. I think that they're a team that absolutely needs to be considered here. But you bring in Boston, the LA Dodgers, the San Francisco Giants, which no one, literally no one is talking about. Once you win it, you wouldn't know how to act. Yeah, no, I understand. I 100% understand. I feel like when the Mets win, I'm 100% going to have a cockiness behind me. But I think the difference, at least from a Mets fan perspective versus a Yanks fan perspective, is a lot of you guys were born right into success, is that we can still look back on the lack of success that we had as fans of being a Mets fan for decades long and understand that while it's great to be cocky and finally revel and enjoy that moment, savor it for as much as you can and not take things too far. I think that is also important because the Mets may win a championship in the near future, but who knows? If they do say in the next couple of years, it might be the only championship that they win for the next 2 decades. Like, we have no clue what the future is going to hold. So I think still being humble to a degree is important versus just being guns a-blazing every single year when, in the Yanks fans' case, for recent years, what do you have to show for it? You know, and when you did have a fantastic season 2 years ago, your boy Aaron Judge was anything but productive, was quite literally the worst batter in your lineup as you guys got swept on national television. So just things to keep in mind when evaluating these situations. But between Boston, Mets, Yanks, Giants, Dodgers, and 2 best 3 teams, where do you think Yoshinobu Yamamoto is going to land this MLB offseason and when? Because there's a belief that Yamamoto is going to be landing somewhere right before Christmas. Hopefully not Christmas Eve. Would kind of be a dick move for people celebrating the holiday. That are, doing things with family in advance. But whenever Yamamoto lands, it looks like it's going to be coming, of course, towards the latter end here of December. So let me know how you guys feel about that. Okay. Joshua, thank you so much for the $20. Joshua says, the best avenue would be signing Yoshi, Giolito, Clevenger, Soler, Robert Stevenson, and Jordan Hicks. Perfect lineups: Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, Soler, McNeil, Alvarez, Marte, Beatty, Ronnie. Josh, I like a lot of what you're saying here because I think you're really not far off at all. If the Mets land Yamamoto, I don't foresee them getting Montgomery at that point. Not that it's impossible, but I just don't see it. I think that Montgomery would likely be heavily prioritized more so elsewhere. And the Mets love Monty. I cannot emphasize that enough. All I've heard is that they really, really love him. Love the fact that he has had great success with the Yanks, in which that's a trade that's still head-scratching to me, really. I mean, the Yanks have made some very good moves throughout their history since I've been a fan. The Monty trade was always a head-scratcher to me from the beginning. I think a lot of Yanks fans agree with that. Bader, early on, when he was healthy, was a home runs galore machine, but that was really, really dying down fast as he dealt with his ailments heading into the following season. And then, of course, became a Cincinnati Red and wherever he's going to end up this offseason. But the Mets and Yamamoto, from what Martino has reported, I believe it to be true, they're going to sign more shorter-term deals to round out the rest of the rotation. So Lucas Giolito, Mike Clevenger, who off the field, different situation. On the field, did put up a respectable season last year. I'm actually going to pull up Clev's numbers right now in his season with the White Sox because everything goes to shit in Southside, unfortunately. And I feel for White Sox fans because they don't deserve that. They just have such a dog shit owner, and they know that. Of course, I'm typing Mike Clevenger, and you give me Mike Schmidt in Fangraphs because my computer's got to run slower than your grandma. Bear with me 1 second, everybody. Clev Dog. Okay. Yeah. 24 starts, 131 innings this past year. Because I know that I think he was away for a little bit because of what was going on off the field. 7.54 K per nine, a 2.74 walks per nine, just over 1 home run per nine, a 3.77 ERA, a 4.31, 4.13 expected ERA, FIP 4.28, leaves a bit to be desired there. Let's get into his SI ERA, 4.81. Don't love that, but again, as a back-end starter, short-term deal, not complaining. If you land Yamamoto, I just want you to add as much depth as humanly possible along with that. Of course, we would love Yamamoto and Amonte, or Yamamoto and Shota Imanaga, but I think us as fans need to settle our expectations because Yamamoto is anything but a lock right now as is. And if the Mets do not land Yamamoto, we're in a completely different situation here. There's no way Yamamoto doesn't sign with Oakland. Who says no? Who says no? Yeah, in Oakland, while they're going to be there just for a little bit longer. Robert, thank you so much for the congratulations. I appreciate that. You absolute beauty. But we talked a lot about the pitching. I'm looking at your predictions now where you guys think these players are going to go. Let me look in the live chat right now. I'm seeing a lot of Mets. I'm seeing Yanks. I'm seeing some Giants as well, Dodgers. You guys are mixing up pretty good. I like that. But now let's get into, okay, Otani to the Blue Jays. Let's see if it happens, Joe. Let's see if it happens. How you doing, my friend? Let's talk now about the outfield market, okay? Because there was a trade today by the Boston Red Sox. They acquired a rental player that some Mets fans were hoping that the Mets would be involved on. Now, whether or not they were, I have no clue. I know the Mets were obviously involved in the Alex Verdugo market prior to him being traded to the Yanks. But Tyler O'Neill, right-handed power bat that has struggled with ailments past couple years with the St. Louis Cardinals, has had one breakout season. Absolutely ripped dude. Is going to look nice in that Red Sox outfield with Jared Duran, who's also an absolute stud. His big guy is old. Matasaki Yoshida, not known for being big, but he's just such a fantastic talent. Man, oh man, do I wish the Mets were more involved in Yoshida's market last year. Just a tremendous talent. Great rookie season for the former MPB star. But by Lenny O'Neill, that essentially takes the Red Sox out of the Jung Lee sweepstakes, and they were a team to monitor in that sector. But the San Diego Padres, I think, are the biggest concern for Jung Lee. Of course, for those that don't know Jung Lee, we did a video on him. The Mets reportedly have had strong interest in the KBO 2022 MVP outfielder, according to Bob Nightingale, over the past week or two. To what extent now, I'm certainly not sure. I don't know if that strong interest is still there or not. Things have been pretty hush-hush on the Mets market for bats right now, on what they're looking for and really who they've been connected to. Jung Lee has been one of those guys, however, and the San Diego Padres have really turned their interest into Lee and fast. And I do think that they have an upper hand only because of a couple factors. One, they have 2 outfield spots right now after trading away Juan Soto. They would certainly like to add there. 2, they have had great success with Ha-Seong Kim, who's a former KBO star in his own right, who signed with them a couple years ago, is a defensive stud, rakes against lefties, and of course could help pave the way for Jung Lee as a fellow Korean, really getting acclimated there in San Diego, knowing that you're not terribly far from where you were residing versus being all the way on the East Coast here, like in Queens, right? And of course, you can count out the Yanks regarding Jung Lee. They have more than enough outfielders now. You know, you're looking at when Jason Dominguez is back healthy, Alex Verdugo might be a 4th outfielder if he's not traded. Like, that's crazy. So the depth there with the Yanks is night and day versus what it was just a week ago. But for the Mets here, as they're evaluating this outfield market, David Stearns has a really interesting plan because the Mets want to add at least one, if not multiple outfielders. But whether it's going to be a big bat-oriented type guy or if it's going to be a defensive-oriented type guy is a toss-up. We know how much David Stearns has drilled down the throats to media of amplifying run prevention and knowing how imperative that is. The Mets were one of the worst defensive teams in baseball last year in their outfield. They were absolutely hot shit. You got Mark Canha losing the ball in the lights in left field. You got Starling Marte not knowing how to use his lower body because he just hasn't been healthy. And you got Brandon Nimmo, who's a stud in center, but those corners were absolutely brutal. You had some infield hiccups as well throughout the regular season. And we know that run prevention, of course, equates success and helps out your pitching staff quite a bit. How many games did we see for the Mets this year where they say did have pitching, but defense was absolutely kaput? You know, we've seen that on many occasions. So I'm for David Stearns having this priority for defense, but you need to also make sure you add offense in doing so. Excuse me. Apologies there. I only trust Paso No Morosi, Jays fan Furious. Appreciate the donation, Raul. You've been a long-time supporter. Greatly appreciate that. Point I'm trying to make is Jung Lee, the Mets have interest there. He checks off boxes defensively. Offensively, he's a phenomenal slap hitter. They call him the Tony Gwynn of Korea for what it's worth. But will that be enough as your starting outfielder? I mean, if the Mets went out and they got a Jung Lee, and they got Michael A. Taylor, and they got one of a Jorge Soler, JD Martinez, or Justin Turner for DH, Len Yamamoto, like that's the most ideal offseason you could probably hope for. Teoscar Hernandez is a name that has not been talked about at all so far this MLB free agency, as one I truly hope that the Mets have an interest level in because he checks off boxes for them, can give you competent defense in the corner, even if he profiles best as DH a couple years from now. He's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. He's probably going to be around a 4-year deal north of $80 million, supposedly. Nothing the Mets can't handle. Of course, multiple years younger, 3 to 4 years younger than Marte when the Mets signed Marte. And, of course, can help you on the bags, helps you with power at his best as a 30 home run guy, north of 100 RBIs, is coming off of a down year with a 740 OPS, turn things on big time in the second half. I think there's a lot of potential with Teoscar Hernandez there for the Mets on an affordable price should they have interest there. But that, again, has yet to be seen. But Tio's a name I think we should certainly be monitoring. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., not too much there. Again, a high contact bat, a guy that doesn't have an overwhelming power, can give you 20 bombs a year, stepped up big in playoffs at times for the D-backs in their past run, but not someone that I think the Mets have a whole lot of interest in that front, even though that he can handle his own defensively without a problem. I just really haven't seen much connection, correlation to suggest that makes a whole lot of sense for this team outside of them just in desperate need for outfield help. And then the trade market's the interesting one. The Mets, from what I've heard, were this close to trading for Manuel Margot as a potential fourth outfielder / platoon type prior to the Rule 5 draft deadline where you need to make players exposed. They were close in landing Alex Verdugo. I shouldn't say close. They were involved in the market. They were one of the final 4 teams to acquire him. He goes to the Yanks because the Yanks obviously prioritize him the most. And for the Mets, I'm curious what their limit was or what they were offering, because at the end of the day, Verdugo is a rental as well. Manuel Margot, if I'm not mistaken, I think is a rental too, even though it could be wrong. So the Mets have shown an interest level in rentals when they know they're not going to give up the entire farm for them. Unlike a Juan Soto, unlike a Corbin Burns, unlike a Shane Bieber, where these guys are going to absolutely cost an arm and a leg for you. There's no denying that whatsoever. So Stearns has made it very clear he's heavily active in the trade market. So unless we shoot for the stars here and pray for like a Randy or Rosarena, what are some names that come to mind for you guys? Let me know. What are some outfield names that you think could be appealing? No, I don't see Cody Bellinger coming here. I don't think the Mets have interest, nor do I want the Mets to commit 7-8 years to a Belly who just refound himself, or we don't know how that's going to project long term. I have my reservations there. Of course, I'd be ecstatic if the Mets got him, but I would have my reservations of just praying that the Cubs season wasn't not necessarily a one-off because he's a former MVP, but it's like how healthy and reliable can he be throughout a long-term contract? I have my natural concerns there. So when we evaluate the outfield market, what are some other names to you guys as fellow fans come to mind that you can think of? Because again, the free agent market doesn't have a whole lot there. Ideally, I would love the Mets to land a more offensively oriented corner outfielder with a defensively minded fourth outfielder, whether that's a Michael A. Taylor, a Kevin Kiermaier. Again, wishful thinking, because what we want versus reality may be two different things. Because just like how the Mets desperately want and need things, so do the other 29 plus teams in baseball, right? So it's easier said than done. Luis Robert would be fantastic, but that's a guy you're costing up a lot. Adam Duvall is a guy I absolutely love. I'm so glad he brought that up, Bill. Adam Duvall, I think, and truthfully, I think Duvall in a either platoon role, semi-fourth outfielder, or really even being utilized as DH could be great. Duvall is a huge home run get, big swing and miss. He fluctuates with how he performs versus lefties versus righties each year. And just under 100 games this past season, though, was very productive for the Red Sox. Even after coming back from his wrist injury, was still a big power bat in Boston and ripping those things left off the green monster. The Mets really wanted Duvall a year ago. He went to Boston for a more guaranteed everyday role, and aside from his injury, he was very productive. I'm not opposed to Duvall whatsoever, but I would still like more than that. Like Duvall, if he's the biggest bat we're adding to this lineup, I, of course, will have my concerns because that isn't a whole lot, and you're banking a lot on the Francisco Alvarez's of the world, the Ryan Mauricios. Well, those guys are great, but Duvall's someone where you can't bank on him to be your everyday guy per se when there's that lack of consistency with his health. I think in a platoon role, in DH, fourth outfielder, because he's still a plus defender. He can play in the corners. He can play in center. Duvall, even at the age of 35, is still a freak athlete, and I wouldn't be opposed to him, but I still would like to see something more there. I certainly would. Hunter Renfroe is another interesting name. Another power bat, lacks defensive upside at times, lacks the on-base ability on a consistent rate. But again, if you're looking for power and you're looking for power at short-term cost, yes, he can certainly provide that for you in a DH position. That wouldn't be outlandish to me whatsoever. Trade for Cease and Eloy. I love the way you think, John, but again, if the I'll say this. Let's play devil's advocate. I don't see it happening because it's going to cost the entire farm. But Cease, 2 years left of control. Eloy, multiple years left of control, at least 3, if not 4. David Stearns did make a note that if he's going to trade away a lot of key talent, we're talking a lot, like bigger deals, you need to make sure you're acquiring guys that have multiple years of control where it compensates for that, where it makes sense from both sides here as to why, say, the White Sox would be acquiring these guys, but also why the Mets would be doing this. The Mets are not in a position where they want to be acquiring big-name rentals that are going to cost you a lot, not financially, but asset-wise, when these guys could be walking a year from now, when the Mets on paper are not going to have the prettiest team in 2024. That's just the reality of it. They're not going to. Even if they go out and do every single move that they want to do this offseason, they're still not going to be the best team on paper heading into 2024. And that's okay. No one expected that heading into this upcoming season. However, there is a possibility that the Mets could part ways with some young talent for multiple years of control. And if we're going to talk in that route, Randy Arozarena would be a tremendous get for this team, who has been recently shopped by the Tampa Bay Rays. I actually want to talk briefly about Randy and his market here. I know we talked about Jorge Soler, JD Martinez, Justin Turner, all guys that would be appealing for the DH position on the shorter end, should that be the route the Mets wish to go down. But having a heavier emphasis here on that being in the outfield, let's just talk for a minute about Randy Arozarena, pull up his numbers. I, of course, have done a video on him over the past week or two. If you haven't checked it out, highly implore you all to do so. He is most definitely a name I would love to see in Queens. Would take over the fan base right away as a fan favorite. And what I love most about Randy Arozarena, no, he's not the best outfielder in baseball by any stretch, but what he is arguably one of, if not the most clutch guy when it matters most. When you look at what Randy's done during his playoff runs with the Tampa Bay Rays, when you look at what he's done in the WBC representing Team Mexico, it's impressive. Randy loves the spotlight, loves it. And that's the type of guys I want in this clubhouse. That's the type of guys I want on the field. I want leaders here. I want guys that aren't going to be shying away from the lights and saying, like Trump, oh, no, turn those lights off. No, I want to see people in Queens that understand the big moment, because what we've seen with the Mets since Steve Cohen became owner is that very few Mets understand the big moment. Francisco Lindor has had his fair share of understanding that. Edwin Diaz has had his fair share of understanding that. To a degree, Pete Alonso, but that's to a degree, not too much. I want to see this Mets team have dogs on this team, guys that know to step up and outperform their regular season expectation in postseason when it's most important. And Randy Arozarena, let's look at the numbers here for the 28-year-old outfielder. 95 runs scored, 83 RBIs, 22 stolen bases, 23 home runs in 151 games this past year, a 254 average, a 364 OBP for a 425 slug, very solid OPS, a 126 WRC plus, which means he's 26% better than the average player in baseball, and a 3.3 WAR, which was his second WAR season, second best in his career, only trailing his 2021 campaign, where he had 20 bombs, 94 runs scored, 69 RBIs, 20 stolen bags, a 274, 356, 459 clip. Again, 2022 season Randy was nasty as well. 20 bombs, 72 runs scored, 89 RBIs. But I think the most impressive thing for Randy in 2022, especially 32 stolen bases when we didn't have the new rule, where guys are stealing bases at a ridiculous rate now because you can only throw over to first base twice. That's helping out guys that know how to steal bases so much. But the fact that Randy had his breakout stolen base year the year prior to that rule beginning is very impressive, to say the least. His walk rate went up tremendously this past season. Far and away the biggest walk rate he's had in his career, 12.2% walk rate versus 7.1% in 2022. His K percentage was the lowest of his career in 2023. I'm loving this. Randy. Sign me up. If you're any team that's looking for controllable outfield help, Randy Arozarena needs to be towards the tippity top of your list, because he's just such an uber talent. Love so many things about the guy. I mean, he's so swaggy, but he backs it up too. I think that's the biggest thing I love about Randy Arozarena. He might be acting a certain way, but he backs it up with his play. You gotta love that in guys. So add him to I would love Randy. And the Mets pull a trade out of their ass, if like out of nowhere, the same way that, of course, AA and the Braves have been doing this offseason, we would be ecstatic as fans. Not get my hopes up. I have a feeling that they're going to address the outfield position still in the free agent market, but is something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on, because the Mets have been very active in the trade market since the start. There's a reason why they were in on Manuel Margot. There's a reason why they were in on Alex Verdugo. Will they go for names bigger and above that versus, say, around league average outfielders? I'm not sure, but we're going to be following along. It's going to make for very interesting coming weeks here as we get so close to, 2024. We're just a couple weeks away from it being a new year already, and we still have yet to see any big dominoes fall in the Mets' favor. Not that there were any true guys that the Mets were heavily targeting that they missed out on. If you want to say Eric Fetty, by all means, but that's on a much smaller scale that no one, and I mean no one, is losing their sleep over. Lane Thomas is a fantastic talent, one of the most underrated players in baseball for the Washington Nationals. But why would the Nationals trade with the Mets? They're not going to do it. I don't foresee that happening. And Mike Rizzo's going to continue to be the stubborn ass that he was, like what he was at the 2022 deadline for Soto. I don't see why he's going to trade in division to the Mets, no less. Would I like Elaine Thomas? Absolutely. Let's pull up his numbers real quick before we wrap things up here, guys. And again, if you're chiming in live on a replay, thank you all so much. Really greatly appreciate it. Continue to smash a like and subscribe on if you enjoyed the show. If we could get to 250 to 300 plus likes by the end of the live show, we peaked at 700 concurrent viewers. That'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much in advance. Please make sure, highly implore you out to check out the previous content. The videos have been coming out pretty much daily, no matter day and night. We're always grinding here, WardyNYM, and the recent live shows, including the latest Bridging the Gap podcast, myself and Patrick Hennessy, talking all things New York baseball, giving our version of New York sports radio, which of course might not be too palatable at times because we're going back and forth. We're doing our butting of heads, but there is a reason for the way that we talk and act. And I feel like we actually have a knowledge, which is something that most people, and unfortunately a lot of radio today, don't. And I don't mean it as a personal slight, but it is truly a shame what a lot of New York sports radio has become today. It's a shell of what it once was back a couple decades ago. So I'll leave it at that. Mets are not a mystery team. I don't think they're a mystery team for Soto. Pardon me, not Soto. Otani. I don't think that's the case. Okay, looking at Lane Thomas's numbers, let's do this together, everybody. 28-year-old outfielder, 2 years of control in his contract. 2023 for Lane Thomas, 157 games played, 28 home runs, 101 runs scored, 86 RBIs, 20 stolen bags, 268 average, 315 OBP, 468 slug, nice OPS, a 109 WRC plus, 9% better than the average player in baseball, 2.7 to WAR. Lane Thomas drastically dropped in his walk rate this past season, a 5.3% walk rate, not great. So that's the reason for the low OBP. But he's tapped into power that he hasn't had in years prior. The runs scored is very impressive. Lane Thomas was the face of the Washington Nationals this year. Let him be the face of left field for the Mets. I wouldn't hate that, but I just don't see the Nats doing it. I really don't. Okay, everybody, before we wrap things up, I'm going to take a moment to answer questions, comments, and concerns for you guys over the next 5 minutes. So if you guys have any further questions, comments you would like to share with me or ask away, by all means, please go ahead. And thank you once more for chiming in. And thank you again for all the congratulations and the kind-hearted words I've received over the past 24 hours regarding the news I broke that your boy's going to be a dad. So thank you again for that. It really, really, really does mean a lot. Mets get Monty if no Yamamoto. It's certainly possible. But it's also possible that if the Mets don't get a Yamamoto, that they pivot entirely elsewhere. And that's where the free agent market gets really interesting as to where they could find themselves landing. Because I don't foresee the Mets trading for rental starting pitching. So controllable starting pitching, it would be key. Cease fits in that category. But is that what the Mets are trying to prioritize right now? Not entirely sure. Where yes, a Jays fan, I'm still confident we get Otani, but I don't understand why Morosi would tweet that without more confirmation. Unfortunately, and this is the thing, again, John's a great guy, but is it possible that the people that were relaying him this info have been plenty accurate in the past, but just missed it here? It's possible. There are a lot of situations where you have top dogs and reporters that have great sources, but the sources can be wrong. It happens. Circumstances change. There's also a possibility that maybe Shohei was going to go there, and he said, you know what, I'm going to wait. I'm actually going to, you know what, because it got in the public eye, I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold off. Like, that happens, right? So these things are unpredictable, but it is hard to justify John Morosi's lack of credibility right now because it is ridiculous. All offseason long, the guy has swung and missed. I mean, holy shit. I give him credit. At least he's swinging, unlike taking pitches like Daniel Vogelbach. I know that was a very unnecessary shot at Vogie, but it is what it is. I already said it. Morosi is someone that is not known for breaking news. He's just a nice baseball mind. He's involved in the AHL market as well. That's great and all. But how many people are here sitting saying, hey, John Morosi's my favorite reporter. He's the guy I go to for all my breaking news. There's not one single person in here saying that because he's not known for it. And now we're expected to believe that he has the inside scoop on Shohei Ohtani. It's silly. It's silly. Like, you know, Howie Rose a couple weeks ago saying he might have some info on Otani. I just feel bad. That poor you know what had no clue what was coming his way. You can't just throw that out. And he's older. I don't think he understood it. But you can't just throw these things out with today's market, today's social media. Gets millions of impressions right away, which he does not want. Howie would be the first to tell you that. He's not the type that's looking for an attention. The complete opposite. But it shows that everyone's trying so hard to understand what Ohtani's market's like, but no one knows a single flying fuck what's going on. And everyone's so desperate to be first. But it's nothing more than that. Everyone wants personal gain. That's the biggest takeaway from these Ohtani sweepstakes. Everyone wants something for themselves. They don't give a damn nearly as much about Ohtani as they do about getting the chance to be first. And that pisses me off. It pisses me off. Ken Rosenthal going out saying basically how wrong it is of Ohtani keep things hush-hush. I understand he's the face of the league, and I understand it's imperative for top players in the league to put MLB on a pedestal, but it's still their choice at the end of the day. If Ohtani wants to kind of keep things to himself, if Ohtani's one that keeps a lot of things close to the chest, if he doesn't want to be in a big market like New York, and regardless on how you feel about it, that certainly is the case now, that's his right. So we should not be out here saying, okay, it can't be this way. Like, that's ridiculous. You know, it's not his fault that he's an anomaly of a player. Shame on the rest of baseball for not figuring out how to throw and pitch at a successful rate the way that Shohei has. You know, he's a ridiculous talent, and he deserves all the credit and all the love in the world. But this is his situation. We need to stop with this notion that, oh, because he hasn't made a decision yet, he's selfish. Of course he's going to be selfish. Every player that works the market is selfish because they're focusing on them. They're focusing on their families, and they're understanding the market. That's how it is. Yet for some people, it's the first thing that this is their first understanding. It's so stupid to me. I'm losing brain cells talking about it. It really does piss me off. Why would Yamamoto sign with the Mets? Joel, I just spent the past hour and the past 2 months explaining that. Highly implore you to check out previous content if you haven't. Go get Yamo and Bellinger. I don't see Belly coming here. I really don't. Thank you for the congrats again, guys. Love you all. Go grab Josh Hader. Hader ain't coming here either. We'll say this, though. I'm actually glad you brought this up because I forgot about it for a second. The Texas Rangers do not look like a likelihood to bring back Jordan Montgomery. So, in the Mets' efforts to try to land Monty, even if he is, say, a plan B option should they lose out on Yamamoto, those efforts just became a greater chance, a greater likelihood. Because the Texas Rangers, I mean, if there was mutual interest to get that there for especially what he's looking for, it would make a lot of sense to return to the reigning World Series champs. But should these reports hold true, because again, I feel like we have to take everything almost not with a grain of salt, but close to, because even with how accurate reporting can be at times, it can also be so contradictive. You have one guy saying this, another guy saying that. They're both credible. And it's like, okay, then which one is it? But to what we know that has been reported today, it looks like the Texas Rangers are not going to be bringing back Jordan Montgomery next season, which does help the Mets and their chances of landing someone like him. Yes, I 100% believe the Mets are going to have a competitive season, regardless of what happens with this market. I firmly believe that. I think the Mets are going to be a fun, young, and exciting team this year on 2024, which was the opposite of what they were in 2023. The Mets with expectations fell flatter on their face than a piece of paper. That thing was paper thin flat. It was ridiculous. They couldn't handle the pressure. They couldn't handle any of it. They were schmucks. They really were. And on top of that, they didn't play entertaining baseball. Holy shit, was it a drag to watch this team this year. And let alone covering them on a night-to-night basis. Dog shit. I'm looking forward to actually watching entertaining baseball again. What is your hot take this offseason for the Mets? My hot take for this offseason for the Mets is that they're going to make a sneaky trade for an outfielder or a DH. That's my hot take. That they're going to land someone that really hasn't been in the public eye much, or just someone that we haven't heard much reported connection between the Mets and said player. That's my hot take. But guys, with that being said, that is going to do it. I want to thank you all so much for being in here. Thank you so much for watching live on a replay. If you watch on a replay, let me know your thoughts, your biggest takeaway from tonight's show, which was a whole lot of different things going on in Mets land. But I really, again, appreciate everyone that's taken the time to watch me, not only tonight, not yesterday, but in the years past. I mean, if it isn't for you guys, I can't have the privilege of doing what I do here for a living. So thank you once more. Stay tuned. We'll probably be back live either tomorrow or the following day. We'll have more content coming out this weekend. Stay tuned for it. But until then, have a great rest of your night, day, evening, whatever.